In Lekutei Sichos, Chelik Yud Gimel, page 105, there is a Ha'ara 9. The Ha'ara has a whole inyan, and at the end of the Ha'ara it says, Avol Re'ei Sichas Parshas Mates Umasei Tovshin Lamed Gimel. But look in the Sicha of Parshas Mates Umasei Tovshin Lamed Gimel. When it says Avol, but means different than what it said before. In other words, what he's saying in the last line is that after he says the whole inyan in this Ha'ara, he says, but look in the Sicha of Parshas Mates Umasei Tovshin Lamed Gimel, you will see different than what it says here. So I want to explain the background behind these words, the last line of this Ha'ara. This Sicha that's printed here in Lekutei Sichos Chelik Yud Gimel came out for Shabbos Parshas Mates Umasei Tovshin Lamed Gimel. It's a Sicha that the Rebbe said, Parshas Mates Umasei Tovshin Chovov. And there the Sicha, the Rebbe explains the posuk where it says at the end of the Parsha in Mates concerning the Dinim and Medorim, the posuk says, Eila hachukim asher tziva Hashem es Moshe bein ish leishte bein av lebite bein reo beisavia. Which means these are the chukim that Hashem commanded Moshe Rabbeinu concerning between husband and wife and father and daughter. This refers to all the dinim that the Torah said in the earlier psukim that the father could nullify the neder of his daughter and the husband could nullify the neder of his wife. So here the Torah makes a sum total and says these are the laws, the chukim that Hashem commanded between husband and wife and father and daughter. And the question the Rebbe asked, why in this Sachakal at the end of the Parsha, why doesn't the Torah also mention the mere fact that you have to keep a neder? Because part of what the Torah said earlier is that when you make a neder, you have to keep it. So the Torah should have said, these are the laws of a neder, that you have to keep what you said, and add also, and the laws between husband and wife and father and daughter. And the Rebbe explained, because the Torah uses the word chukim, that he's only making a sum total of the chukim. Chukah is a mitzvah that has no rational reason. So the mitzvah that you have to keep your neder is not a chukah. There's a rational reason for it. When you say something, you got to keep your word. But the halachas between father and daughter and husband and wife, that is chukah. And that's why when he talks about the chukim, he only mentions these two. When the Rebbe said this, we were wondering, because Lepel Mamesh, even the fact that a father could nullify the neder of his daughter and the husband neder of his wife is also understood. Since the wife is under the reshus of her husband and the daughter is under the reshus of her father, makes sense that when she makes a neder, it's up to the father to decide if he wants the neder or not. It's almost as if when she makes the neder, it's on condition that the husband or the father will agree. And actually, the Klei Yakar says that, even though his pirush is not al derech hapshat, but this is a word that fits in derech hapshat. So we assumed then, Bashaz the Rebbe said the Fabringe, that probably what the Rebbe meant was not the mere fact that a father could nullify the neder of his daughter and the husband the neder of his wife. That's not the chukah. The chukah are the details. The details are that, for instance, they could only nullify it if they do it on the day they heard it. There's no rational reason for that. Also, the lotion they have to use, there's a different lotion the father uses and a different lotion the husband uses. Those have no rational reason. Probably that's what the Rebbe meant, that these are chukim because of these details, but not because of the general din. So when we prepared the Sicha for Shabbos Parshas Mates Umasei Tovshin Lamed Gimel, we wrote this word that we understood the Rebbe meant. That when he says that this is a chukah beinish leishte bein av lebite, he meant the details of it. And that's what we wrote. We wrote it in Ha'ara because it's not something that's directly negeya. So it went into Ha'ara. And the Rebbe was Magiya the Sicha, and that's how it said there. Came Shabbos Parshas Mates Umasei by the Fabrengen, Tovshin Lamed Gimel. The Rebbe referred to this Ha'ara, and the Rebbe said that, how could you say that? B'chlal, a lot of mishpotim, mitzvahs which are in the category of mishpotim, means that the general mitzvah has a reason. But the details, lav dafkin, not necessarily have a reason. And he gave an example. For instance, one of the mishpotim, which is in Parshas Mishpotim, is that if an ox kills an eved, the owner of the ox has to pay the owner of the eved 30 shkolim. And this is one of the mishpotim. Why? Because it makes sense that if your ox killed an eved, you are responsible to pay. And it's in Parshas Mishpotim, it's part of the mishpotim. Even though why dafke 30 shkolim, that detail has no reason. A reason that we understand. It doesn't have a reason we understand. It doesn't change it and turn it into a chukah. It's still considered mishpotim. So too here, the Rebbe said, if the general idea that a father is able to nullify the neder of his daughter and the husband neder of his wife is understood and it's not a chukah, because the details in it are not understood, doesn't turn it into chukkah. So it doesn't fit. The Rebbe says what it says in this ha'orah, that the details, because the details are not rational, therefore the mitzvah is called a chukkah. And therefore the Rebbe said differently, a different beer, and said that this is not so. Now, the interesting thing is that by the Fabrengen, when the Rebbe said this, the Rebbe added and he said, I'm waiting for 7 years for somebody to ask this question. Because the Sicha was said in Tovshin Chavov, and this is Tovshin Lamed Gimel. I'm waiting 7 years why nobody asked this question that I'm asking now on what was said then. The interesting thing is the Rebbe never said this then. It was only self-understood that this is what he meant. So we see here how much the Rebbe wanted Mizrach Kochen in the Sichos, that not only what he actually outright said, we should look into it and try to understand, and if not, to ask the questions. Even the things that he did not say outright, but it's obvious that this is included in what he said. He also wanted you should understand that, and korzach in that, and if you have a question on that, you should ask. We know that many times by the Fabrengen, after a Sikha, the Rebbe would say, Ten lachocham ayech kameid, meaning, if you give an idea to a chocham, he could go further and understand it even more than what he was told. So you should understand even more. So we see that Rebbe complained that 7 years since I said the Sikha, and no one asked, even though he never said this, but this was included in what he said. The Peil after Shabbos, the next Likud was added a line that's supposed to add to this ha'orah here. Avol re'ei sichas parsha matis u'maseh tovshin lamed gimel. The ha'orah stayed. The Rebbe was magia the sicha before Shabbos parshas matis u'maseh tovshin lamed gimel, and he left this ha'orah. But Shabbos he asked the kasha. So afterward they added that there should be a new line written here. Avol re'ei. Look at the Sicha from Parsha Matis Masad of Shalom Gimel differently. And the Rebbe allowed it to be written. He was Magia that, and it's written, and that's how it stayed. And when the Sefer was printed, the Ha'orah is there with this word that it's called a Chukah because the details are not understood. And then it says it then, but look at the Sicha of Parsha Matis Masad of Shalom Gimel, you see differently. So now we have to learn. If the Rebbe asked this kasha, in other words, he said this is not so, then he should have not left this Ha'orah. He should have crossed it out. He left the ha'orah. Obviously, there's a mokim for this also. And then he said, he left the avol re'ei, look in Matas Maset Tovshin Lamed Gimel to say it's different. So we have to look into this to see why the kasha is not such a real strong kasha. That's why he left it. But on the other hand, that is a kasha. This is something for everybody to learn.